Friends, family, fans, we are back with another episode of Back Nine Bets, episode 172, Shinnecocked and loaded. We are ready to rock and roll at the US Open. It's Back Nine Bets, brought to you by DRAFTKINGS. Use code FGD when signing up as a first-time depositor. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, tell your grandma, tell your aunties that we have got Tee Off Sports sitting alongside me for the US Open for some Model Combat. Spencer Aguiar, what's up, my brother?
Byron, I told you, I was making the joke before the show that last week was the longest day in golf for everybody trying to qualify for the US Open. And today for me feels like the longest day in golf podcasting. I told you I have like 7-8 podcasts that I'm doing today, but I will always make time to be able to do a show with you. It is my favorite thing that I get the privilege to do whenever we do get the team up, and I say it every single show, and I'm going to keep throwing it out there until somebody wants to sponsor one. Please sponsor a show for Byron and I so we can get back into the saddle again.
We are desperate for a match made in heaven. We just need money. We are an expensive relationship, me and Spencer. You need to subsidize us. We don't flirt for free. Unless it's a major, then Spencer and I flirt a little bit. But we are ready to rock and roll, Shinnecocked and loaded for this week, and it's going to be a good one. Spence, tell me, what are you kind of expecting this week at Shinnecock, as high level as you can, or dive into the weeds, baby, whatever you're in the mood for.
So Shinnecock, and you're going to hear this on all the shows, it's widely regarded as one of the best championship tests that you're going to see in this country and quite frankly, probably throughout the world. And it's a funny answer when you look at this venue. Take the average stop on the PGA Tour, Byron, and you get about a 60-61% made fairway rate from players. And you look here and you get up to about 71% in 2018. And you hear that answer, and I think the very first thing that if you don't know anything about this tournament is you would think straightforward setup, ease of accuracy, and maybe some of that's deeply rooted in the answer where the accuracy sentiment comes into play, but the 30% of the times that you miss the fairway, it has you essentially dead in this 5-inch thick fescue rough when you are wayward. 7,440 yard layout, which means that these players that are being more cautious off the tee, you're now also laying back, which now means harder second shots into these greens. You have undulated complexes. I feel like, and we will see with the wind and we will see with everything, and I understand in 2018, the USGA lost this facility on Saturday. But when I look at this course, good shots get rewarded, bad shots get punished. And I did not find there to be any specific game type that was removed from the equation to start the weekend. That's something that 99% of courses worldwide fail to do. Like, sure, you're always going to have data biases that come into play, but I didn't see that as much here at Shinnecock. So this is a wide open field, Byron. I'm curious to hear if you feel the same way about it. But when you're not removing any specific game type, we can get really nerdy and deep into the metrics of why we like certain players.
Spence, this is... there's a multitude of reasons why a course is a great course. One, because of the difficulty. Second, because of how it plays to its members. Third, who it allows in the professional realm to succeed. Because
Correct.
Certain venues just don't allow US Open 5K golfers to thrive. Because 5K golf is typically someone that doesn't hit it as far as everyone else, and it just gets gobbled up by the thick rough at a golf course. This week, there's Russell Knox, Zach Johnson, skinny Matt Fitzpatrick back in the day, Louis Oosthuizen, Paul Casey, Daniel Berger, Webb Simpson. These are all names that frequented the 2018 leaderboard. It tells me it's wide open. Then there's also Tony Finau, Tyrrell Hatton, Xander Schauffele, Tommy and Brooks, some solid options with just every element of their game in control, where the shorter hitters had a chance this week. It's good to see someone that finished 6th at a US Open driving at 278 yards is not something you can say often about a venue. So I agree, Spence. There's no one answer that's correct this week. I think if you lean into certain areas, like for me around the green play this week, you can find some bargains. Like you're getting slightly cheaper options compared to your premium ball strikers like Cameron Young, Matt Fitzpatrick, those kind of guys. If you just take a look at like the odds board in general at DraftKings, it kind of explains the situation here, because all of these guys have good around the green play. Cam Young, Xander, John Rahm, Fitz, Tommy Fleetwood, maybe Ludwig, Brooks. They're great ball strikers as well. That's why they price this way. But then you start scrolling to this range here, Spencer, and there's similar golfers that are maybe better short gamers as well, that also provide some solid approach, ball striking, etc. That's kind of where we're going here. It's wide open. So I've buckshotted the board this week. I don't know how acute you've got with your betting this week, though.
DFS wise, which is a different answer from betting, this is one of my favorite DFS boards that we've seen for that reason. I think there's a lot of value to be found. My betting card is about as in left field from what you would expect me to say. And it's going to make for a fun show, I feel like, because I do have a take at the top, and we can have that discussion at some point, whether you want to do it now or later.
Is it a Scotty Scheffler take, Spence?
It is a Scotty Scheffler take. So I understand all the negatives that have come into play with Scotty Scheffler, and we've seen the attitude of him on the course with Ted Scott. We've seen the attitude with him off the course with my good friend, somebody that I've worked alongside with, Jason Sobel, where he's just testy with all his answers. And it is not the typical Scotty that you have seen of last year, where it was this happy-go-lucky and let's win every single golf tournament and smile as we do it. It's every single thing has a reaction and, frankly, an implosion that has kind of ensued. And he's not really put together 4 good rounds of golf at any tournament over the last couple months. So you see that, and even like, I understand the price has drifted from like the 2s and the 3s into the 6s and the 7s and maybe the 8s if like, as we move across this, and that doesn't mean that value is now in play. You could make the argument that he was still way too low to begin with, and now we're kind of normalizing where he should be. But I always thought he was kind of in the ballpark of what was fair. Like when he was 4-1, I had him at 4.5 or 5. When he was 5, I had him at 5.5 or 6. Like he's kind of always been in this general range where I don't see these massive disparities that everybody seems to be seeing most weeks. It doesn't mean that I've bet him at any of these tournaments, but I'm also not like sitting here with this huge gripe that like, how could he possibly be 4.5 to 1 in this field? Kind of thought more or less he was in the general ballpark of where he should be. If you look now and you've seen this drift that's come into play, and you get him into, let's just say 7 to 1 and in this numbers, and you can get boosts and all these things. What I wanted to see is we've heard names like, and these are golfers I like I like Matthew Fitzpatrick this week. I think Matthew Fitzpatrick is a standard prototypical fit of what you would expect for this venue. I think like the names that when you go deeper, a Russell Henley makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of options and bettable commodities out there that you can go towards. With Scotty specifically though, and like even if we just keep it at the top with Fitzpatrick and Cameron Young and Rory and Oberg, let's maybe throw Oberg to the side because he hasn't won anything. But these names that have been winning, people hear that and they go, well, Cameron Young was the hottest player in the world for about 2 months, maybe not so much now, but was the hottest player. And Matthew Fitzpatrick is now the hottest player in the world. And there can be a correct sentiment behind that. But when I ran the numbers over the last 24 rounds and I merged the data to fit Shinnecocked, and I only looked at what these players have been producing, and I've told you this a million times, Byron, if you've ever listened to a show, I run data from a lot longer term than most people do. But I shrunk it down to 24 rounds because I wanted to see this like central point of the Scotty struggles and where does Scotty fit for Shinnecock based off of those statistics. He was so by far and away number 1 in my model and projected win equity, Byron. Like I had him proper continuing to be in that 5.5 to 1 range. And when I saw him there at like 6.5, 7, I just think we've seen too much of a drift that has ensued. And when you think of what Scotty is at his very core and what makes him the best player in the world, it's target golf. It's hitting your spots. It's being able to say, I am going to hit this club 210 yards to the center of the green. I am going to hit my driver here to this spot. I'm going to lay up off the tee and I'm going to miss here, leave myself a 178-yard iron coming in, and I'm going to put it within this general range that's going to give me 15 feet for birdie. at his very best, that's the Scotty Scheffler recipe for success. And I understand at this course, we can talk about whether that it can add a factor to the mix. Rough is always going to be a problem. If you miss, there's going to be unfair and uneven lies. Although I talked about it at the beginning, there's a 70% made fairway rate. Scotty can control some of those outside factors. And I think the ability for him to try to hit spots throughout the week at a course where we don't need him to make every single putt. We need the putter to be good to win a golf tournament. We don't need him to make every single birdie look that he gets. I just think there's an overreaction and an overcorrection that has happened to the market. And this was not the take that I was planning to do when the week started. I kind of had it penciled in before I ran numbers that I was going to bet Xander Schauffele and Russell Henley and the Matthew Fitzpatricks and all those names. And I don't think that that's even the incorrect decision. However, you start at the top with Scotty Scheffler and you kind of run out of room of what you can do after that. So I'm going the aggressive route here. I'm backing Scotty Scheffler to win this at 6.5 to 1 or higher.
Wow. That's bold, Spence. For the slam.
There's birthday stuff. There's Grand Slam on the thing.
Father's Day.
There's Father's Day. There's a lot in play for Scotty. And look, Rory had so much scar tissue that came into play over and over again at the Masters. I don't think we've seen that scar tissue yet from Scotty. And he's kind of getting a very clean look at this major, in my opinion, to where there is not this hoopla that we used to see with, even like a Jordan Spieth at like the PGA or Rory at the Masters, to where it's the only thing that people are talking about. The only comment that I hear about Scotty is that Scotty is not himself and he's not playing good golf. There's almost this reduced expectation that's come into play. And I almost like that for him as he tries to accomplish something that very few players in the world ever have.
Yeah, from that, I don't think that is probably on his mind even.
I heard him say that. Yeah, I don't think it is. I think you're correct.
Not for him. I think the thing with Scotty right now is I don't think he's like 100% upstairs. He's not like
could be correct.
Ultra fine-tuned. And this is the reason. Now, is it causation or correlation? Because is his mind not being 100% in control the reason he's playing bad golf? Or is he playing bad golf and when we don't see Scotty playing bad golf, he's happy. Then he plays some bad golf and his mind, he gets rambly and starts lambasting Ted and things like that. So I don't know, but I also wanted to be sure about the fact that if we're going to leave Scotty, for me at his price in DFS is a no-go zone. I'm going to just slam in everybody else beneath him because I think the pricing is just way much more fair in that department. We can chat about that later. But Scotty is the second best in Devil's Anus strokes gained, Spence, because 2+ over par scoring average for each round that I've pulled in here. Scotty's got 50 rounds when it's been 2+ over par in the last 5 years. And he's insane. And it's even better, like if you go back to just since he became world number 1 in 2022, it's incredible. Like we are looking at rounds when things get ridiculously difficult. These are strokes gained. He's gaining 8 strokes at the Memorial. He's gaining 7 strokes at the PGA Championship. He's gaining 5 strokes at the Open Championship. All of these in round 1 for most of them, which is kind of hilarious to think about now. Masters and PGA Championship again this year, 4.5 and 5.3 when scoring was well over par. And shout out Alex Fitzpatrick, who's, kicking Scotty's ass in that department since the Euro Indian Open. But I have always felt that Scotty doesn't have his best when things get like this and very difficult and almost unfair, because I do agree, Spence, that good shots will be rewarded, but I also think that good shots could very much not. Great shots will be rewarded this week. A good shot can land up being kicked in the teeth very unfairly. So, because I think the margins this week are so slim that Scotty could hit a couple good shots, good to great shots that really start pissing him off. Again, if we get premium Scotty, Spencer, at this price, we've seen it with Colin, we've seen it with all these guys. When their price drifts to bettable, no-brainer range, that's when they win. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the attitude problems are legitimate. And my hot take is I don't think he's playing poor golf. I still think he's playing really, really high level golf of the best player in the world. And unfortunately, attitude and human elements and all those factors matter. And all that, the only factor that matters here is if Scotty thinks he's playing bad golf. Because if Scotty thinks he's playing bad golf, then he's not going to win this golf tournament and he's not going to be able to turn it around. But I almost wish I could, I would run the risk of Scotty just ripping me the way that he rips Sobel. But I would like to talk to Scotty and be like, hey, dude, you're playing good golf. Just keep doing what you're doing. It's going to turn around. But that's the human element that we cannot know where he's at mentally entering this tournament. I'm going to keep beating the drum here until something changes, that Scotty has been the best player over the last 24 rounds, even without a victory. And people don't realize it because, one, he's not winning, and two, he's acting like a horse's ass throughout every single day.
He's averaging 3 strokes per round over the last 2 months. He's averaging 2.0 over the last 4. He's kicking everyone's teeth in, strokes gain wise, like we're mentioning. Not winning, having one random person just beat him at the RBC Heritage. Fitzy beat him in a playoff. Fitzy hit probably he hit that 4-iron poorly in the playoff, to be honest with you, and it actually landed up being a great shot for him, which won him the tournament. Second to Cam Young at the Cadillac. He had no chance of beating Cam Young. No one could have beaten Cam Young that week. He had a sun running week. Third at the CJ Cup, Byron Nelson. He's been playing great golf. Just these could easily have been wins. Those two, and this is another second place at the Masters as well, which he had to Rory. So we could be speaking in a weird world. Scotty Scheffler having just won 3 of his last 5 starts. So I don't know, Spence. I'm interested. I'm rooting for you. I'm scared, to go there because I think we're not seeing the very best of Scotty Scheffler heading into the week.
And we'll drop it after this, but it's a definitive take. When you take Scotty, you are taking Scotty and you're moving on for the week. You're saying Scotty's going to beat the 155 other players that are teeing it up. Where, look, we can talk about a lot of these names, even if they're not on my card. I've mentioned a few of them already. There are a lot of golfers that I do like this week that make complete logical sense, even at the prices that you are getting them at, of a way to build the card. It's almost one of those things where there are many different paths that you can have here to try to paint, which might be no pun intended on this for you, Byron, but where you can paint a picture though, to where you can actually build this in a lot of different ways. And my way is just aggressive at the top with Scotty.
He's number 1 in my models, both of them. So the weekly and the major. That's kind of what I wanted to show here. Is I filtered by just power rating. For the weekly, it looks like the weekly's rating a higher number anyway, but the ranking wise, Scotty's 1 and 1, obviously, no matter which way you run it. John Rahm second for me in the weekly, Rory second for me in the majors. So that's kind of how the data's running this week. It's an interesting situation. I'm going to be leaving Scotty alone in general. I have a couple bets that I want to run by you, Spencer, and it's going to start with the guy that's on our screen. His name is Patrick Reed, top 20 plus 175. Patrick Reed to win the tournament at 50-1. I don't have him on the screen. I don't know why. I said he was. He's not. Now he is, because he's ranked 7th in the model. This is the major model. If you see the major finish rates here, it's everything in this data is major related. It's major finish rates. It's major strokes gained, except for the proximity buckets on approach, because I don't have those for majors. Patrick Reed finished 4th here when they played here last time. He's the exact guy, Spence, that if we're looking for discount and premium around the green play, I've basically, I'm not going to, if you go watch the Fantasy Golf Degenerates, you're going to see all my bets. Patrick Reed, Justin Rose, Hideki Matsuyama, all on my card. This is some of the best around the green players in this field. Oh, and Cameron Smith as well. Sorry. On the card. All 4 of them, some of the best around the greeners in majors over the last little while. They don't only do that well. Patrick Reed has been dialing in the irons lately, Spencer. He's, above average accuracy off the tee in majors, lacks distance. I think, those are the kind of profiles that typically hurt you at US Opens. This week, not so much. Thoughts on Patrick Reed, Spence?
I like Patrick Reed. So in my model, he is 8th overall. That's through, sure, a lot of this major championship stuff that's going to boost him from the stats that I have. But I think there's a lot to like about him. And you kind of brought it up at the very beginning of this. Like, people don't realize how realistic it was for him to actually win this major the last time it was held here. He was very in the thick of it. Like, 4th place doesn't even really tell the story of how much in that contest that he was through certain durations of time over the weekend there. I think you bring up a lot of good points. And even if you look at some of the iron play with him and some of those proximity numbers and buckets, sure, the weighted proximity is not going to look all that great for him. But if you look at strokes gained in difficult approach conditions, 20th for me. If you look at difficult to hit greens and regulations, he's 27th. Like, that is a story that can't really be told if you just look at proximity buckets and you just say, this is not a good iron player. It's like, he can be a bad iron player while still being good at similar tests. And like, he was one of the big climbers that I had for me in that area. So like, that's one of the names, Byron, to where, like, unfortunately he misses the card. Tyrrell Hatton missed the card. Russell Henley missed the card. It's all these options in that like fringy 50-1 section that I can make a very good point of why I think they make sense to bet in, whether it's an outright, a matchup. Maybe for me, it becomes a matchup or a placement bet, but I like the Patrick Reed take. I'm also going to be playing Patrick Reed this way in different iterations of the market.
Yeah. He's actually been sneaky when it comes to like top 20s in majors as well. If you take a look at his last couple majors, we've got a 3rd at the Masters in 2025, a 23rd at the US Open, a 12th and a 10th in his last 6. So 4 of his last 6 have been 23rd or better. This is like an ideal course fit. I mean, the more difficult, there's also like strokes gain grinder, Spencer. Oh, I missed another green. No problem. Let's make 4. Like this is what you're going to have to do this week, is completely forget about what you should be doing as a golfer and just remember that you need to beat everybody else in the field because they're facing the same difficulties as you.
I'm sure you've talked about this already, but it's probably good for the show for anybody listening. I mean, you and I are 2 of the people out there that build our own models from scratch every single week. You want to go into a little bit of what you did end up weighing? I know there's a lot of major championship pedigree that comes into the mix, but like, how much did you look at any of those, whether it's bogey avoidance categories or how somebody scores in difficult venues? That might be a little bit of the major championship that enters the mix with that, but I would be curious to hear your answer.
Yeah. So I actually have 90. I've left 10% off somewhere, but what I've started with, I think this was 25% at one point. Just, I need you to, if you take a look at this leaderboard, Spence, back in 2018, it's pedigreed major champs and major performers. Top, like you can go back in the immediate history of most of these guys, and there's a top 5 to a top 10 in their more recent major starts prior to this. So that's number 1. So basically going into that, I use that data to essentially give me a total finish rates, win percentages added up to top 5s, to top 10s, to top 20s. That's going to give you your 214% for Scotty Fleetwood. Wow. Scotty Scheffler. And, these are guys that even Cam Smith, who's 106, I mean, he's top 9 in top 10 rates in majors since 2021 began. And he's had 6 consecutive miscuts. So like looking at the long-term data helps you kind of, okay, how did this guy just show up out of nowhere? Well, he's got pedigree. Maybe he hasn't been playing the greatest. Also, he has been playing a lot better in the last 3 starts. So there's that for you. But I'm looking at major finish rates. That includes the top 5, top 10, top 20s. Then we scoot over to the right-hand side, and I've got, I think I also reduced the micro model from 25 to, I was fiddling around and forgot some stuff. But micro model basically takes into account how this course is going to play. So it goes to the, now I didn't go and change every single hole. I just used the averages that we can expect. I was a little lazy. It's been a busy week. I've been painting the house as you inferred there earlier, Spence. But The average fairway percentage rate was 70%. The average green regulation was 53%. So I just made it 70-50 and let the model do its thing based off of various driving distances, which I did look into to try and figure out, okay, this one's going to be a little longer. This one's going to be a little longer. This one's going to be a little short off the tee, and leave you with approach yardages that these guys will have. And Scotty, on approach, 9th in the field for me this week, which I've used some longer term data as well, the last 12 months, I think, for this data. So kind of just figuring out that department. And then I ramped up around the green stuff a little bit more than I normally do. And I reduced off the tee stuff a little more than I normally do. So that's basically how this 30%, 20% of this model is running. And then I went and cherry picked approach players and strokes gained around the green guys out of that exact set of sample, which also includes major data. And then I went and took, I went and took a look at who's been playing well in majors over the last 6 majors and the last 10 majors. I'm just a major guy because to me, there's mental things involved with majors. If you can handle it mentally, your game translates. Some golfers play better. Maybe they play the same and other golfers are playing worse, because majors are mental and guys get nervous. So just having a lot of major data involved in my process helped me kind of eliminate guys like Wacko Neiman, who I think Wheels Up was asking about earlier. We can get to that in the later part of the show. But if you're using like someone's recent form on the PGA Tour right now and they just typically don't show up in majors, I'm not going to like overly exaggerate that this week. That's what I did in the other one. This one uses basically just normal data to kind of derive these rankings. And as a result, you can kind of see, okay, are there guys overlapping? We are playing good golf right now on the tours that they're on and playing good golf in majors. And then there we go. That's basically how I landed up with my stuff this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mad scientist approach at the end of the day, which I think it's good, though, for everybody to hear those answers with it because, I mean, like, mine is different than your answer, but it's the same mad scientist approach of what happens when I take this category and I merge it into this and I try to factor in this into the equation. And look, I mean, I think when both of us try to project out for tournaments, we're always taking into account the venue that's being played. We're always taking into account a lot of the factors, whether it's a major for you in this. Look, I mean, I have hard scoring in the weather that's really ramped into mine, but I just thought it was a good thing to talk about on the show because you're going to get very similar answers from everybody. If you can tune into a podcast and we'll leave everybody nameless. I guess this is Pat's network. You can listen to Pat Mayo and Pat's going to tell you this course is going to play difficult. And Pat's correct with that. But it's like there's layers to that of how everybody came up with the answers that they ended up arriving on. That is what makes their take unique on it. And I think that what you just went through for yours is your deep dive, mad scientist approach of what you are doing. And I just think I think that to me, that's why I got into this space. That's why I started writing articles. I love the ability to talk about stats and numbers. And I love the ability to be able to teach or talk about what I am on or what my viewpoint is, whether it's right or wrong. So no, I think that was very well done there, Byron.
The part of that it's like explains it the best is Xander Schauffele coming into this week. Weekly data, he's 11th. Major data, he's the 3rd best guy for me this week. And there's no denying, like look at Xander Schauffele's major track record. So the majors is at the top of these guys' names, okay? You can see there's no gaps in the majors. In the weekly, there's obviously gaps. The PGA, the 2025 PGA Championship, when I laid like 4 units on him to finish top 20, he didn't finish. He finished 28th. That is it. 8th, 1st, 7th, 1st, 8th, 12th, 7th, 9th, 7th. This is what he's doing in the tournaments that matter the most, the tournaments that are the hardest, the tournaments that has the best fields every single week of the 4. He just shows up and finishes his second worst finish in the last 10 majors for Xander Schauffele is a 12th. Clip that.
Well, question for you. Have you bet him to win this golf tournament?
I haven't bet him to win the tournament. I have him a top 20 in all 4 majors at 7-1 that I've placed ample amounts of dollars on. I may even just place a top 20 bet as well. I think I saw -120. I'm shopping around a bit, but I'm involved in his floor in a big way. I think the fact that he just gives you nonstop top 20s in majors, and again, only 2 of them are top 5s and they were wins. So the upside, in my opinion, is not necessarily there with Xander. By upside, I'm talking like top 5 routinely. If you take a look at his major track record, he's only inside the top 5 14% of the time compared to Scotty Scheffler. That's, quite far behind, but he's got the exact same top 20 rates in majors as Scotty Scheffler does, 82% of the time in the last 22 majors. So he's elite at being a safe option. I don't know how much I'll lean into him as an upside guy, but at his price, Spencer, he's $10,100. You can easily shove him into a Rory McIlroy lineup, a John Rahm lineup. You can even start with him at $10,100 and shoot for high upside guys like Justin Rose and things like that beneath him, who's priced cheaper. So, what were you asking that question for?
Well, I believe it's Ian's handle inside, what's his last name there?
McNeely Wee.
So Xander's been a very sharp mover in the space, and Ian's point to that makes a lot of sense, where like he's jumping in front of Tommy and Fitzpatrick and Cameron Young, and like I'm seeing it happen at all these sharp locations, and I think it's a noteworthy move. And like one of the things that I noticed when I built my model is this is not a prototypical US Open where you can bludgeon this course off the tee. This is a lot more links. I mean, it's a links course, like it's a hybrid links at least, but it's a links style course, in my opinion, that looks more like some of the things that you might see on and this has been very well spread throughout the space. I just tend to agree with it. I think Pat might've been the first one that I saw even mention it, that this looks like an Open Championship. I think it is. There's a ton of weather. There's strategy off the tee. There's the ability to salvage a score and get up and down when you find yourself in trouble. And, who has an Open Championship on their resume? We've seen that already from Xander. And I think Xander's playing much better golf than the perception is around him also. Like I just made that exact sentiment or viewpoint towards Scotty. I think Xander has that exact same thing that comes into play. I like Xander this week. I think for DFS purposes, I'm going to definitely be using him. I love the floor that he brings into the equation for all the stuff that you just mentioned, Byron. I didn't end up with an outright ticket, but I mean, anybody who has one, it's a noteworthy move of what we are seeing on him. And I do think he's a really nice course fit this week.
Yeah, I don't understand. Maybe what moves first? Is if an influx of top 20 cash comes in on Xander, or top 5 or top 10, does that shift his outright in sync with it? Like, or if an influx of outright cash comes in, does that change his top? Do books manipulate odds per market or per golfer?
Every book is different with it. I mean, I think if you take a really sharp location, like, well, I can't name the names, I guess, but if you take a really sharp location, you're going to be able to see that move in unison. I'm not 100% convinced that some of these other locations that they move quite as succinctly together, which is why you sometimes see numbers that linger for longer than they should, whether that be in the outright market or as a placement bet. That's something that movements are just not combined in the way that they should be. And that's how you find value of where you can kind of jump the market in certain spots with it. But yeah, I don't know what kind of, I haven't even run ownership projections yet, so I don't know where we stand with ownership, but I don't know where Xander's going to be popularity wise. I just think he's a good fit just at the very core of that discussion.
The thing is, he's going to, right now he's projected 18. And by the way, this ownership is very iffy early on a Tuesday. Don't take it for gospel, but like Bryson being single digit owned makes complete sense. He's 40-1. Everyone else here is like, well above him. So it makes sense why that's the case. Brooks being 8% as well with the injury stuff makes some sense. It all checks out. Let's pivot this way, Spencer. and just jump to some of the most owned options this week. Scotty, we've spoken about. Rory fits. Makes sense. Xander is coming in as the 4th highest owned option. But again, it's like not really that big of a difference in that like second tier of guys. Maybe even Rory's part of it. There's a 2% gap between like 5 or 6 guys here. I think, I don't know. I don't have an issue with more of these guys than not. Maybe Rory takes his second biggest, he's probably his biggest weapon out of the bag, really, because you can't just mash driver around you. And we saw what he did at Aronimink, trying to hit 3-woods. Every time he pulled the 3-wood out, he missed a fairway. Because I was on Rory at Aronimink, so I'm obviously not personally biased towards what he was doing off the tee all week. But thoughts on Rory? Yeah, Spencer, 12-2.
Like, for the most part, I wrote about this yesterday. I think I wrote it in my free article over on my website. Pricing is kind of in line with where my model had projected for a lot of these players. The one outlier, which is what you just talked about, where the market seems to agree that it's the outlier, is Bryson DeChambeau, where I thought Bryson should have been in a different range than this. But I don't have a massive take against any of these guys. Like, I've talked about all the reasons I am going to play Scotty Scheffler. I think that he fits into builds well, and I tend to like, you have to be aware and cognizant of making sure that it's not even that you're making it like unique ownership wise. There's just different combinations that are less likely that people are going to go to. And if you can find a way to even like have a chalky build, but you go to combinations that people aren't going to use Scotty with, I think that's one way to get different. But I am kind of neutral on a lot of these names, or I know that doesn't really help people to narrow down a player pool, but like Rory was the correct price for me. Rahm was the correct price. Bryson is nowhere near what I had accurate, but I mean, that is what it is. Cameron Young was a little bit negative, and then Xander was right where he should be. But yeah, I mean, if I was to power rank this group, I would probably say, and I'd be curious to hear your answer on this too, but I guess I will say Scotty, Xander, maybe Rory, just because I think that people will not want to go all the way up to him as much. I think they're going to be more likely to want to drop down when it's all said and done. Rahm, Cameron Young, Bryson probably.
Spence, I just kind of went down and clicked some high-owned names to make a $50,000 lineup with Scotty Scheffler. Because you can't speak about Scotty Scheffler and not about the other guys. That's the point about Scotty Scheffler at 14,900. Is my most expensive guy was Russell Henley at $8,000. And then you had to shove in a Cameron Smith and an Andrew Putnam at 69 and 59, a Hideki and a Harris English at 76 and 67.
I think for me, where Scotty becomes part of the optimal when I run it is I am much higher than consensus is on Siwoo Kim. Maybe not consensus, at least price point. I don't even know what Siwoo's ownership is right now. Maybe you can tell me that. But
looking 13-ish%, but nothing, I don't know if that will come in that high, to be honest with you, because he's not.
I know the US Open stuff is not going to look good for him. And we've had conversations about this in the past. Like I remember we had this with Joaquin Niemann, whatever major that was, where I liked Niemann and you didn't. And I mean, honestly, you were probably more on the correct end of what was accurate on that. I don't think he necessarily burnt people. I don't think he put together the greatest result of all time. He kind of landed somewhere in the middle, but I don't know, at $7,200, like a fringe top 25 player, I think Siwoo is a legitimate top 10 golfer in the world. Like that's a really easy spot for me to open up salary. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to jump to the very top. Like you can fit a Russell Henley into there very nicely and easily. And there's that 6K range that I tend to really like this week, like that upper sixes. And I know we're jumping across the show right now, but I do think it's important when you talk about a Scotty lineup. Like I really like Maverick McNeely. I really like Kurt Kitayama. I understand the Kurt Kitayama profile from US Opens, Byron, is as brutal as it can be over 4. But I'm also hoping that with guys like Kitayama and Siwoo and even McNeely to a lesser extent with it, that these guys are ready to take the next step of their careers and are playing better golf than we've ever seen from them. And it doesn't take victory for a Scotty Scheffler lineup with those names to start rising up a leaderboard. Like, give me enough top 20 from those names. I do think that you can piece this together. At least I believe you can better than you do on this. Optimal still, and I haven't put in ownership yet, but I run optimal every single week just to see what my model believes is the optimal start to a build. And there's been really high-end weeks where I almost hit the exact optimal a couple weeks ago. And then there's been, last week I had a ton of Aaron Rye that didn't end up working, and Eric Cole that just kind of burnt a lot of those lineups. But optimal still remains Scotty Scheffler, and a lot of that comes down to how much I like Russell Henley, how much I like Siwoo Kim, how much I like Kurt Kitayama, how much I like Maverick McNeely. I know I'm just giving a lineup out at this point, but like a lot of those names make sense into those builds. And it's not just them. There are a handful of other names that you can fit. Like, even I think a guy like Aaron Rye, I'm higher on than the market. I think Rye had a very unlucky miscut last week. I always run the reprojected leaderboards. He was projected to be top 15 at the RBC Canadian Open and missed every single putt over 2 days and doesn't get himself through. I don't think that is some indication that he's playing poor golf now. Do you think there's a mental side of how does he produce as a first-time major winner in his next start? I don't know the answer to that. That would scare me a little bit. But, a lot of those names are names that I bet very early in the week to make the cut. I thought the prices were a little too low on them. So, that's my thought, Byron. Obviously, like, we don't necessarily see eye to eye with it. It doesn't mean you're right or I'm right with it. But I think more so than anything, what it makes a great conversation for is there are names that you can consider alongside Scotty. And if Scotty is too expensive and is too whatever and the rest of the lineup doesn't make sense, where is that next point that either people are going to go to or is contrarian enough to kind of make your lineup different? And that's why I like doing shows with you is we have models and we have like really high level conversations.
Yeah.
We don't really see eye to eye on things all that frequently. We are able to have a true model combat of my thing views it this way, your thing views it this way. Let's have a respectful conversation of why we view it in that capacity. And I think that that's what's so great about us doing a show together.
Dude, it's, the point of the show is to have these respectful conversations, Spence, although I completely disagree. Your opinion about Scotty Scheffler completely sucks right now. I don't even know why I invite you on the show. How can you come on here and tout the best golfer in the world at a major, trying to win for the fourth time, grand, blah, 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 blah. That being said, quick word from our sponsors before we forget, and we can take the time to chill and collect our marbles. We'll catch you. In partnership with DraftKings, new DraftKings customers play free with their first deposit or minimum $5 deposit. Download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app and sign up using promo code FGD today. Cup season is here and DraftKings is going for the biggest stage in soccer. There are over $7 million in total prizes across the tournament. So while the world is watching, you can be drafting a lineup and competing for your share with the first deposit. That's what makes DraftKings DFS the ultimate sweat. Every match has more meaning when you have a lineup. With DraftKings DFS, you build a lineup of real players under a salary cap, and they score points based on how they perform on the field. It's not just about picking who wins. You're thinking through starters, matchups, goals, assists, saves, etc. DFS is all about finding the right mix. Stars who carry your lineup, value players that give you flexibility, and players that can separate you from the field. Over $7 million in total prizes up for grabs across the World Tournament. Build your lineup, sweat every match, and compete for your share with your first deposit on DraftKings DFS. The world watches, you draft. Get in on the cup action only on DraftKings DFS. New DraftKings customers can score up to 3 tickets to play free with your first deposit for your share of millions in prizes. Those ad reads, boy, oh boy. You were on Feinberg's extravaganza, Spence, and I always go right when he's doing his ad read. I get the privilege of being able to watch him from the studio behind the scenes there. And he handed off the disclaimer today to Jay, which was a great move because I lost my stuff. He had to read probably a minute and a half worth of disclaimer, to be honest with you. And if you just lose momentum, you can completely derail that thing. So speaking of momentum, I think, Spence, a fun way we're kind of chatting about weird builds and things of that nature. Me and Sweet Spot were chatting on Sunday night about starting lineups with Matt Fitzpatrick, Terrell Hatton, Justin Rose, Russell Henley, Patrick Reed. They all like right here. You can just jam big names in, 3 or 4 of them, and then get different elsewhere. I don't know how that's going to work, but I definitely see myself building a couple lineups that way. I think also another way to kind of just keep this conversation going is answering some of the chat. I saw old Wheels Up mention he had Suba. Shout out to you on the Suba play, who he's in the mix, man. But he's really trying his best to break through for you there. I don't know about him at this week's event, but he's your guy. You're probably going to be rolling with him. He also mentions he's going to pair it with Cam Smith, Neiman, John Rahm, and Siwoo Kim. I'll answer that, and then you can answer that, Spence. Actually, you answer that, and then I'll answer that, because I've got, we kind of spoke about Siwoo Kim already. If he's low owned, I'm cool. If not, I'm kind of out in a way. John Rahm, I'm probably in regardless. Walker Neiman, I'm out, and Cam Smith, I'm in. Thoughts?
I'm in on Siwoo. I like Rahm. I think he's fairly priced. I have no issues going to him. I like Neiman. I always seem to like him more than you do. I'm not really to me, the two guys that I consistently find myself fading in majors, and look, I probably lost 6 units at the PGA Championship trying to fade Cameron Smith. It's a good course for him if we want to talk about people that can win an Open Championship type of venue. Cameron Smith checks a lot of those boxes. I always worry about his inaccuracy off the tee, and I don't think that this is necessarily wide open enough for him to be able to, even when he won, he could spray it a little bit more than he did. I'm not a Cameron Smith guy. Like, the other one that I never seem to find myself on is Justin Rose. And I know those are your 2 boys at the end of the day, but I think everybody else that Wheels Up said, I'm in on. I just would say probably no to Cameron Smith. And then I know he didn't mention Justin Rose, but I don't know. I just like coming on shows and shitting on Justin Rose, apparently, and watching him come in 3rd place in every single major.
He is I can get Cam Smith right. 2022, I thought I was one of the best outright bettors in the world, because I hit Cam Smith at the Century. I hit Cam Smith at the Players. I hit Cam Smith at the Open Championship, and I was hitting outrights. I think I've hit as many outrights in the last 3 years as I had that year, kind of thing. So it is what it is. I'm better at props and stuff, whatever. Also, didn't hit a single winner last week. Every single bet I placed lost, because I had Brooks Koepka as a top 20. I had Wyndham Clark and Tommy Fleetwood for top 5s. I had Nick Taylor and Sam Ryder for first round leader top 5s, and they both parred the par 5. I missed out on like one bet by every single shot, and it just ate me up, and I had a WD.
Can I say one thing about that? I understand coming close and not winning is a little bit different than the answer I'm about to say, but there is correlation in a lot of ways. I'm not saying that you built the model incorrectly last week. I'll use myself for an example. There are a lot of weeks where I may not have built the model in the way that the event ended up playing itself out. And those are weeks where you can see nothing go through the hoop, and you end up with really nothing that's won. And it's well, what's happened? It's maybe I've gotten unlucky, and I always back test stuff to see what kind of came into play with it. But there are weeks where you're going to build a model that just does not come to fruition. And I almost think, in a weird way of giving this answer, that's more of a positive than always being in this 45 to 55% range where you kind of just land smack dab in the middle and bleed units. I want to be when I am correct, and this is maybe even more of a DFS answer, but when in DFS, when I hit, I want to hit for big, and then when I miss, it's going to be a lot of weeks of missing until I get the pieces correct. So I don't think it's as bad as it comes off in the grand scheme of it. I went 0 for whatever the number ended up being. It doesn't work great for the bankroll when it happens, but every week is its new entity to be able to build from.
Spence, my entire card was in the lead at one point. That's the thing. Eric Cole, top 5, top 5, but he was first round leader and missed the cut. Is that a bad play? Was round 2 what he actually is? No, it was one of the worst rounds he's had in the recent memory. The guy's been on fire. Of course, I jump on him, and then he goes and does that, But whatever. I'm not yet a bitch. It is what it is. I've got good bankroll management. I'm back in action again this week. We're rocking and rolling. It is what it is. Life moves on. It is what it is. I've said that now as many times as I probably can without sounding like a madman. Other names that were being mentioned in the chat here along the way. What's up, Jim? Good to see you, my brother. Round 1 and round 2, DraftKings promo, Spencer, for total birdies. Where are we leaning there?
I need to look at the tee times. I mean, I think that makes a difference here.
Yeah, that.
I don't know. Somebody like Chris Gotterup might be a kind of good look. I mean, this is based off of nothing. I've run no numbers of this, just kind of trying to find players that are good prototypes for this course. I'll go with Chris Gotterup, but that's also through 7 seconds of research where I didn't make it through. I mean, I'm going to use a time that you're not going to be happy with, Byron, but I didn't go through 4:30 a.m. Pacific time to get through that. So you can figure out what time that actually is everywhere else.
Me and Spencer trying to organize a podcast start time with Pacific and Central being in. We just need to stick to Eastern because I add time the wrong way to PT. It's for some weird reason. Yeah, by the way, is birdies or better gained on the field in the various scoring conditions. So, Cooper Dossie's got 14 rounds. I'd imagine that's on KFT when conditions are that way. He dials it in. Jackson Coyvin's got 8 rounds in hellish conditions with gaining a full birdie on the field. Rory McIlroy and Scotty Scheffler, no surprise, score well in hellish conditions birdie-wise. If you're looking for value, yeah, they are. It's like Alex Fitzpatrick, Justin Rose, Tyrrell Hatton, I'd say, right in that 50. Fitzy, I think Fitzy, though, is one of the slower starters he kind of shows up inside the top 20 out of nowhere on a Sunday kind of thing. He slowly graduates himself there. I think between Hatton and Rose, you can expect some fireworks. So those would be my one. If you're going with just one, I think Rose. Because Rose is likely going to make a couple more bogeys off of a couple bad drives and things. I think Hatton, a little more consistent. This is just a complete fallacy. I'm trying to split hairs between one or the other. But Rose, I think, maybe the better putter as well at a golf course like this. You're going to have to sink your fair share of 12-footers, 15, 20-footers for birdie. I think maybe that's where Rose can get it done.
I like the Hatton call. As I said, I'm not a Rose guy, but I can't tell you how many times I watched him become first-round leader in one of these majors as I faded him 6 times in matchups.
Also, if you're looking for Sam Burns, I think the round 1, round 2 markets, round 3 leader, Sam Burns. If you want to go into that situation, he's there. I think that's the thing with Burnsy, just doesn't have the nuts in the moment. So that's your question answered there, Retail Ripper. Other questions? Kurt Kitayama from Neil. By the way, Neil, you're coming on the show for the John Deere Classic week. Thank you very much. I didn't even chat to you about that. It's just happening now, and I'll see you there that week as well. Kurt Kitayama is suddenly one of the 2 players in the field to rank top 10 in total driving and strokes gained approach in 2026. Only him and Fitz. See, that kind of situation is like if you are giving me a different profile coming into the week, what does Kurt Kitayama get up to in majors off that kind of situation? Is not going to be the greatest, obviously, but is he going to? He shows up 42nd for me in majors. That 10th place doing some work. Outside of that, not the greatest anywhere else there, and he also struggles when conditions get the hardest. Like you can see him get better as conditions get easier.
Yeah, there was a negative trajectory in my model when conditions got more difficult. I do think with Kitayama, though, if you throw away like the really early stuff where he didn't make a cut for the longest time, and when he did, he was like 60th place. He has been a little bit better recently, and a lot of the ball striking metrics with him, he might be, I think there's 3 players in my model, maybe 4. I'd have to go run it, but that are inside of the top 30 that are less than $7,000. I think him and McNeely are back to back as being the 2 highest there. So I'm going to have a lot of Kurt Kitayama this week. I'm living under this belief for the price tag that we don't even necessarily need the victory from them. And I just think that at the price point, there's a lot more upside there than meets the eye. And there's a lot of people being scared because of the major championship pedigree, which sure, there is a problem there. But as you just mentioned, there's a 10th place in there that you can pull from. There has been a tournament here and there that's been found success. And it's not like every single US Open course is exactly the course that's played the year prior with it. So I just view him as a really good golfer right now that is really popping at the right time entering this tournament.
And Spence, the thing is, you can project and you can reflect. You can look at Kurt Kitayama leading up to the PGA Championship and say, there's no way he's going to finish 10th. Yeah. It's golf. At some point, in order to have history, you have to create the history, right? Like you have to have your first top 10 for somebody too, so being early on some guys is worth it. Waiting for him to show you a T10 at a PGA Championship can help, and he grades out wellish when it comes to major stuff as well. Like his short game is what lets him down the most in majors. Now, do I fancy him at a golf course where you can just really rip driver? Again, total driving, he's there, but I think the distance thing is really what he gets up to, and that's going to be dinged a bit this week. But grades out nicely for me, so we'll see what he does. I had another question for you too, Spencer, about, we can just ask Pilon.
Yeah, that was a good question. That's a good question.
Pondering if this course is going to be so hard to play, where does the separation in DFS come? Or is it like heavy wind in the NFL, they can still complete passes and score birdies? Well, that is the situation where it's who can get the ball in the hole. Who is the Josh Allen that's got the arm strong enough to kind of make the passes and also just run when you need to? It's going to need a full game. You have to have a well-rounded game, and you have to have the mentals. I think is one of the hardest parts to handicap, Spence, is who can endure this kind of torture for 4 rounds straight.
Yeah, it's finishing position. It's players that are able to get themselves into the weekend. There's chaos and carnage that's going to ensue at a US Open, and a lot of lineups and a lot of builds are going to get decimated early on. There's going to be names that miss the cut here at high ownership percentage that people either don't see coming, or the people who see it coming are able to kind of put themselves in better leverage positions down the road with it. I like the US Open. Like one of the articles, like the actual article that I won best research article for, Byron, talked about sharp versus square in the DFS world and what tournaments were you more inclined to find sharp action end up taking advantage in, and what tournaments did the squares have a bigger edge. And I ran it through a 5-year perspective of it. The US Open was a sharp tournament through and through on it. Like I thought that was, this is kind of the wrong way to say it, Byron. Like I don't want to say that and then say, this is the best major that I've done. Like, of course it's like, I'm sharp. Like that's not how I mean it. But like, I do think that what it shows is that the data profiles and some of the statistical outlooks play better here than they do. Like the Masters was one of the worst. The Open Championship was terrible too. I was surprised on those two of how many square options, whether it be through the betting market or DFS, ended up finding success. PGA Championship was pretty neutral as any tournament would go. There wasn't really one way or the other. US Open was the strongest over 5 years with it. But I like this tournament for that reason of what you've talked about. It's who can put the ball in the hole, who can find the ability to not make mistakes, and who can be creative enough to get themselves from point A to point B. You do that better than everybody else. It's going to show. Like you're going to have big discrepancies in DFS to where people are going to go 1 for 6 in made cuts, and some of your 6 to 6 lineups, the equity on those builds are just going to skyrocket if you can get one.
And I think the accumulation of guys that the pricing, it gets so cheap so quick, Spence, with some really big names, which, that does, make the case for Scotty. It was interesting that you mentioned, how many guys do you have inside your rankings that are cheaper than 7K inside the top 30?
I think it's 3. I think it was, it's Kitayama, McNeely, and I guess it's 4. It's Aaron Rai and Adam Scott.
I've got Aaron Rai, Alex Noren, Alex Smalley, Corey Connors, and I auto-adjusted Cam Smith in there. So I think I got a total of 7 with Mav McNeely and Harris English as well, right at the top of the board there for me in these ranges. So, that's a nice way to kind of get different is if I infuse a couple more 2 or 6 or 7K guys into those this like core stackage over here that I have of these, like, to me, this just screams value. Is like, boom, this is like my guys that I'm going to be playing this week because they just immediately priced better than these guys, kind of thing. So now, do I have Tyrrell Hatton on the card? Yes. The others, not so much. And I think, hot take, Cameron Young, spoke with Ryan Noonan back and forth on this, and I feel terrible not going through with it after almost agreeing. I might have even agreed on the RBC Canadian show that I was going to play Cam Young at this US Open, and I have not. I think taking his superpower out of the bag for him, he's insanely impressive off the tee with the distance and accuracy. It's still going to be an advantage for him, but I don't think he's going to have, the distance advantage over everyone that we typically see at other venues. And around the green play for Cam it can get dicey at times. And we're going to see a lot of it. And we saw it kind of get weird for him at the Masters. We saw it get weird for him, when he got a little in the mood. So Cameron Young, Spencer, where are we rolling with him this week?
Well, first of all, before I answer that question, like, where is his ownership? Where do you have it projected compared to, let's just say, any of the guys that are 2 or 3 spots higher or lower on the pecking scale?
Cameron Young is at 14. So, it's fine. If we filter by ownership, he's not even, in the first page. He's that next tier of like Cam Young, Sam Burns, Patrick Cantley, Tyrrell, Siwoo, Victor. Like, of that bunch of guys, I think Cam Young's the guy to click.
Yes, correct. I just the difficult part about it is if you compare him directly to the price points of the players around him. Like, I would rather move up for Rahm. I would rather move down to Xander. I would rather move whatever direction it is to get the Fitz there. Like, I guess that's way down.
That's $1,600 that you can go to Matt Fitzpatrick. I mean, they are 1A, 1B right now with what they've got up to. Fitzy is a better around the green player anyway. I totally agree that Fitz should be 5% more owned than Cam, even with the price baked in and things like that. So,
like, I'll leave the books nameless for this. I just brought it up because I was curious. Some of these books are sharper than others. I just wanted to see who Cameron Young was matched against in the head-to-head market. So he's an underdog at some of the sharper books to Oberg. He's closer to a pick'em than you would think against a name like Sam Burns. Like, he's minus 122. Burns is minus 109 at that shop. Xander's somewhere between minus 125 to minus 135 against him. He's a virtual pick'em against Fleetwood. John Rahm is minus 145 against him. Like, I kind of share very similar viewpoints to that. Like, I think he's kind of in that range of a Fleetwood, and that's not even I like Fleetwood this week. It's just, I keep finding myself wanting to go up, whether it is to the very top, which I think I'm curious what happens with the Scotty ownership, because I feel like every single time that I have mentioned Scotty's name, the backlash that comes through mentioning Scotty in any capacity, whether it's a better DFS, is usually like, nothing of what you're talking about. How could you possibly play Scotty? And for me, that's typically from, look, I mean, I am fine with having egg on my face at the end of the day. I am never going to play things and even if Scotty's popular, like, I understand Scotty can become popular and like we can reassess based off of what that ownership ends up being. But like, I am always going to go with what my model says and the beliefs of it. It doesn't mean that I have to be so beholden to it that like I can't find a way to veer away from it. But I mean, I do think in the best way that I possibly can, whether it ends up being right or wrong, explain why Scotty makes sense this week. You may end up being correct, Byron, that playing Scotty is the egg in the face situation to where he implodes and, he pushes Ted Scott down in a bunker and all of a sudden, like, he's actually getting arrested and escorted off the premise. But like, I just think that any time that you have such strong opinions one way or another, there's a conversation that needs to be had from it. doesn't mean that it doesn't mean it's not correct to play him or fade him or whatever it is. But like when there is such a strong reaction of if you're playing Scotty, it is so good or it is so bad. I think that we have to at least have the conversation, because if we knew how Scotty was going to do, if we knew Scotty was going to win, then everybody would play him at 100% ownership and we would go from there. And if we knew Scotty was going to be bad, then everybody would 100% fade him. That's not the game here. Like I can guarantee that like nobody's winning tens of millions of dollars because you know exactly what's going to happen. Like you're going to get some things right and you're going to get some things wrong. And I don't mind the situations where I get it really wrong, because I might get it wrong 6 times in a row, but I can promise you that in like that 7th situation, if you can find it be in a contrarian enough spot, specifically for DFS, if that's what we're talking about here. Look, I mean, we've talked about this before, Byron. I've said it numerous times. The payout scale is so top heavy in these things that like I'm not trying to min cash. So I'm trying to find what do I believe is the most optimal route to actually win as much money as I can. And I'm willing to go with that route no matter what that ends up looking like, and being wrong more often than not if it puts me in that position. So that's the way I would explain it. It's like, I understand that like we can come back on Thursday and it's like, yeah, of course, Scotty was not sharp. How could you possibly play him? But I just think that that's my viewpoint of like, that's why I think he is playable in a lot of these spots.
Dude, that's the thing. It's also got to do with his price. It's also got to do with his ownership. You know, this is
100%.
all of the stuff that you got to go into equation with. And at the end of the day, Spencer, it doesn't matter what other people think. It just matters if you were profitable or not in the long run. Because you could be wrong about Scotty Scheffler this week, but your long-term take on him could be fantastic. This is 1 week of golf on probably one of the most diabolical golf courses on earth.
I'll give you a deeper take than that even. I can be very wrong on Scotty Scheffler. Maybe harder in DFS if I end up lock buttoning him or anything like that, which I'm not planning to do that. Like I'm going to have exposure spread into other spots, but I can be wrong on Scotty Scheffler to win this golf tournament and still find a way to be profitable by matchups and placements and made cut bets and anything else that enters the mix. I think sometimes as an industry, we get too caught up on one singular take that somebody has, and it goes good or bad, and everybody wants to crown that take as the greatest thing they've ever seen, or throw it into the dumpster of everything that person said must be wrong. And it's like, well, look, like Byron, you went through and talked about how you built your model. You can't tell me like every single bet this week is going to lose for you. Like you're going to find success and pockets of success and negative pockets of not success throughout the year. And it's like, you roll with the punches, and it's the ebb and the flow, and it's the bankroll management that you talked about. That is how you become a long-term winning gambler. And I will leave it at that.
That's the thing. Is like, am I gutted that I lost 11 units last week? Yes, it sucks.
Yeah.
Am I going to claw back? Yes. You know, an outright this week is 10-unit win. Boom. It's just like fixed like that. Now, do I hit outrights all the time? No. But, you know, that's why I'm trying to ladder Cam Smiths and things like that, you know, to get into the world. Spence, I'm going to just run through my banners here real quick with all the bets that I've placed so that I can get them out to the people. We've just got so in depth in the conversation. I've completely like shunned all these bets to the side. So I'm going to rapid fire off some bets as we go through here real quick. And then I'm going to get one sentence from you after each name.
Okay.
Cam Smith, 160 to 1. Cam Smith, top 5, top 10, top 20. The top 20 is at like plus 350. I dropped it in the Discord there. 0.4 units, 0.3 units, 0.2 units, 0.1 unit. You know, that's how you do the ladder for one full unit to win $1 million if he cashes this thing outright. Then I know your Cam Smith take already. I'm
He's
basically
volatile. I'll just say volatile. I mean, volatile is, and I don't think volatility is a bad thing necessarily in some of these markets. I
want to show, where did I do? I did a Cam Smith write-up. But if you just go take a look at Cam Smith's stuff, oh my God, if you type in his name, he doesn't even show up there. Okay, so this is the thing. Cam Smith had a coaching change right around here. Like, now you're seeing Cam Smith doing this stuff. after a coaching, like if this just happened and the coach was the same and whatever, it means less to me. There's context in the change of data, yeah. And we know that Cam Smith, if you take a look at this is what he's capable of, like in 2023, 2022, 2021, when he was doing his stuff. He's chipping and putting as well as he's always done, obviously getting a lot more opportunity to chip right now based off of what he's been up to on approach. But if you look at it like this, Cam's playing terrible golf. But then you go to the 2026 stuff and you see, okay, there's been a sizable change in the approach play in the last 4, and the driver seems to be kind of like scooching its way towards mediocrity again. Like if Cam Smith, it's like we were talking about with Scotty Scheffler, Spence, if he could just be a neutral putter, Scotty Scheffler's going to win 1 million golf tournaments. If Cam Smith can just be like a neutral driver of the golf ball, he can win 1 million golf tournaments because he's that good on approach when he's feeling it. There's a lot more wedge opportunities than a normal PGA major. US Open major events have typically like 10 plus long irons, 12, 13, 150 and beyond. Yeah. It's pretty spread out this week when it comes to proximity buckets. So that's my take on Cam Smith. I'm going to dive right into Harris English at 100-1. He's one of my futures. I would also bet it this week, regardless. He's got 2 second-place finishes in majors in the last 6 starts. He hasn't missed a cut in forever. You can bet Harris English as well, top 40 at plus 100. If we go over to Harris English's situation, I'm not even going to look for his name. I'm just going to look for top 40. Find a guy by the name of Harris English. We should shut up pretty quickly. He's actually, if you want, you can go to the top 30 market for H. We finishes top 30 in majors as often as he does top 40. When he's top 40ing, he's top 30ing, and it's a sizable gap between his top 20 rate. He just finds his groove in the top 30, top 40 markets. So getting that plus money with ties paid in full plus 100 was a great bet for me, in my opinion. It's a fantastic way to take advantage of a guy that's just got incredible major pedigree. And sorry, this is his last 12 months worth of finish rates for Harris English. This is the joy of having 2 models, is I completely find myself scanning the wrong thing. He has his top 40 rates. It's the same shit, but it's different percentages. 50% of the time he's inside the top 30 in majors. And that includes some really poor golf when he was kind of injured. The side of things, it's been much better. I mean, he's cashed this bet basically 5 of the last 6 for top 40, in majors. And I think he thrives in hellish conditions. Harris English, thoughts?
A little bit lower than the Maverick McNeelys and Aaron Rise of the world. Right in that general section, though. Top 20 player for me for a safety mark. You talked about how he plays in these hellish conditions. Like, he's the number 9 player in my model at hard scoring venues. I don't know if, look, when the winning score gets to around that even under par mark, I think that's the best chance that Harris English would have to win a major. And I think that it opens up the playing field for certain people like him that see this really big boost into their profiles when the scoring gets tough. I like that top 40 bet that you mentioned quite a bit. I think that you could argue that higher than that even technically makes sense. He's 32nd overall in my model for whatever that's worth. But as I said, the safety number for him, 16th. So you see a lot of the positives of why a top 40 would make sense there.
I want to stress that I was aiming for a top 30 with this bet. At the time, there weren't top 30 markets. The markets that did have top 30s didn't have ties paid. Top 40 with ties paid, he can be one of the top 45, 50 golfers this week and still cash this bet. And I looked at the top 30 odds. It was like plus 140 without ties paid for a top 30.
Yeah, he's been steady too, like for all the reasons you've talked about. We've consistently seen this from him in majors to where we're yes, there are a couple that give you a little bit more of those high-end results, but even outside of those, like, he's very consistently producing inside of the top 40 more often than not, which another player that, like, the skill set is really starting to pick up over the last 2 years. And we've seen it with the high-end results. And, like, by your math, Byron, of how you even look at it more so than I do, we are now seeing the super high-end finishes. And the next step of that is you actually somehow steal one of these. And a hard US Open is kind of the exact prototype of a build that Harris Englishes of the world can steal.
Farmers Open champion.
Correct. Yeah.
Runner-up at the Arnold Palmer Invitational a couple years ago. Those are diabolically difficult even par type venues. So I love the Harris English play this week. Hideki Matsuyama, 66-1. Again, we spoke about him. I'm going to be looking at a Hideki Matsuyama top 40 at -120 as well. If you take a look at Hideki's top 40 rate in majors, 76% of the time he's top 40ing. He is one of the more consistent guys that sacrifices upside in the way he plays majors to almost ensure that he freaking makes the cut 95% of the time. In the last 22 majors, he's only missed one, I think. The thing is, it's the driver that I think inhibits his ability to really get up the leaderboards. This week, driver's important, but it's not going to make or break you. Like you can have a couple bad drives. Make sure you make your bogey at worst, maybe scramble for a par. If there's anyone that can scramble for a par after a very bad drive, it's Hideki Matsuyama. Like the fact of the matter is he's not the most accurate. He doesn't have tons of distance. He's not a good driver in majors in general. But from then on out, where I think the three more important areas of the golf game exist this week, Hideki Matsuyama is fantastic. So, great major pedigree, great course fit this week as well with the emphasis on around the green play and approach. I mean, those are his two super. Spencer, how many strokes does Hideki Matsuyama gain in US Opens on approach?
Oh, I feel like you've told me this before. I feel like this was something that we talked about on like maybe before the 2024. I mean, it's going to be some ridiculous number if you're asking the question. What does he gain on average?
Second place was 1.3 strokes on approach.
My original guess was going to be something absurd like 2.1 strokes or somewhere in that area.
It's not far. 1.6.
A little high, but yeah, I mean,
but dude, like he dials it in. And I want to wrap this into the fact of using US Open data track records to project what's happening this week, unless it's maybe Pinehurst number 2, maybe LACC. So 2023, 2024 US Opens. Those to me are the only two that I think you can use. Oakmont, maybe around the greens a little bit, but the driving test this week is completely different than Oakmont. Typical US Opens are thick rough around the greens and fairways with minimal landing area until you get to those. This week, it's a lot more open expanse, shorter grass, that kind of stuff. So don't get yourself too worked up about those kind of trends. I do have them over here for us, but it's not going to be a thing I lean into. Hideki Matsuyama, Spencer, how are we liking Hideki Matsuyama this week?
My model likes him better in safety markets than it does for the upside. Kind of what you just talked about, where whatever you lose off the tee is probably what you lose on some of those upside numbers. But I have him 23rd overall. Where do you have him in your model this week?
I have him 16th in the major model. And if we take a look at Hideki Matsuyama, he's going to be, oh my God, a little further down here, 27th in the weekly. So that's where, another big jumper when it comes to majors versus weekly success. He gets it together in the majors, which I'm completely cool with this week.
Yeah, and I mean, any of the off the tee stuff that is a struggle, like the one thing that I do like is when I looked at less than driver courses or, high rough penalty or any of those stats, like he is not substantially worse off the tee in any of those areas of what you would come to expect. So like if the driver's bad here, it's bad everywhere. And kind of as you've talked about, there is an ability to club down off the tee. So if you get any uptick in the driving numbers from what you would expect, all of a sudden this profile as a whole kind of sees a jump. I like him more than what my model would. And I probably tend to agree with you on this, that I think he's an interesting DFS play at the price tag of what you're getting him, because I remember us talking about this years ago. A $10,000 Hideki where win equity comes into play is not the same version as mid $7,000 Hideki to where those top 20 finishes can really start catapulting a lineup upwards. So I kind of like your take on him.
Yeah. I'm going to take a gamble on if he sun runs with the short game, having ample opportunity there, he can win. If he sucks it up with the driver and just does what he normally does, I really like the top 40. Again, I just got skunked last week when you start laying 1.2 units to win a unit. Things get a little frisky, but I'm down. I'm going to back my belief in this man and the process that I have when I bet these bets. And a top 40 on Hideki Matsuyama is very fair in my opinion.
I think of the guys with major championship pedigree that are not at the very top of the board, I don't know if the market has completely built in to some of his past success, whether it be through the approach play at US Opens or anything further than that. I think the market's a little bit slow to move on Hideki.
He's also been playing relatively shit the last little while.
I give this answer as somebody who's faded Hideki. It feels like for the last 2 months, like my model's not as, and it's a lot of it's the price tag that we're talking about, but I'm not necessarily sitting here as like, we have to not play Hideki. I think that, look, whether this ends up being right or wrong, I think he's in the similar vein of a golfer of like a Justin Rose, and I can get Hideki for cheaper than him. And that's kind of where the intrigue comes into play. Like that to me is like, if I can build up that major championship success through him, I'd rather go that route than with Rose. But those are also famous last words for me with Rose.
Famous last words. I've yet to get my golden goose with Rosie in a major. The simple reasoning here for him is 5th in the major model, 17th in the weekly.
Yeah,
that's the thing, right? Is he's a major guy. He's not going to model out well for people that use the weekly stuff, the routine data, because this is the part where like I'm still trying to figure out how to model correctly. Spencer, is like, how do you know when someone, like for me with Justin Rose, I know that he just dials it in majors. Like this is just what he does, like he's in the time of his career where he's doing this. And I think he's going to win one soon. We are looking at a person that's got essentially 3 second-place finishes in his last 7 starts in majors. Like 3 top 3 finishes. At a golf course where you're just going to be grinding over 12-foot par putts nonstop. At a golf course where I think we have a 10th place finisher in 2018. It's looking good. This is my favorite part about Justin Rose is the US Open thing.
Yeah.
He's missed 4 US Open cuts in the last 5 with a 37th. Not good, but again, at this golf course back in 2018, he had a 10th. Just because it's a US Open, does that mean it's a bad place for him? Maybe mentally, yes. Maybe he just doesn't like this golf tournament, how they set it up. I don't know. But again, I'm banking on the major pedigree for Justin Rose, and hopefully he gets it done for us here. One of the elite guys when it comes to top 10ing in majors, and as a result we're going to be doing to him at top 10 plus 380 and a top 5 at, it's the other way around, I believe. The top 5 is probably plus 380 and the top 10 is plus 175.
It's the thing with Rose and players in general. Like I understand that the recent stuff from him, and like I'm gonna ask you a question of where you think I have him in my model because it's higher than it normally is, but sure, the recent US Open stuff can be bad, but if we're trying to find where he's won a major championship before in the past, I think it was 2013 when he won the US Open. So like we can cherry pick numbers all we want and say, well, Justin Rose cannot play at a US Open. I think Justin Rose at the end of the day is just a boom or bust commodity. And I don't think that that's a bad thing for an outright ticket or like a top 10 bet. For me, I don't love it for DFS because I think he can burn you very quickly if the ownership gets too high. And I don't love him for matchups because I think he becomes a very easy fade candidate that sometimes gets too far pushed up the board. Where do you think he ranks in my model for upside? And it's not some like spectacular answer, but for like as much as I shit on him, it's not really that bad of an answer.
I think you're probably going to have him like a couple spots worse than his like price. So probably 25th.
I have him for upside 24th.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And I think we are looking at projections right now of like sub 10%, which is cool. I'm cool with that. You know, like, again, I couldn't agree with you more, Spencer. He misses major cuts quite often, but he's, you know, like maybe that's the US Open speaking. I mean, if you just look at his rankings amongst everyone else here, this is a massive miss. This is a perfect, like, I would totally be okay playing Justin Rose as an outright in a top 5 and a top 10, and also betting against him in a matchup.
Yeah.
you know, as a hedge, because if he's losing to your guy, he's probably losing by a lot. You know, he's missing the card, or he's not finishing remotely close to. When your top 20 rate is 52% in majors and your top 40 rate is 57%, there's only a 5% difference there. It's boom or bust. This is what Justin Rose is. So, you know, this is why we go top 5, top 10, and the outright on Justin Rose and call it a day there. We'll see.
I mean, even like, I understand that I'm lower than perception on Cameron Smith, but it's like a similar-ish answer to Cameron Smith. I can dislike a player from an overall playability sense when you're looking at safety markets and understand why Rose is on your card as an outright. And that's not even like double talk of trying to figure this out. Like I said, at the beginning, like, I'm kind of just going to shoot things straight of what I think with it. And I think that's why you and I, Byron, have such good shows together, because we kind of just shoot it straight back and forth of what we actually think about players. But I wouldn't come on here and say Justin Rose is a decent play in some of these upside markets unless I actually thought so, while also holding a ticket on Siwoo Kim to beat Justin Rose. Like, both of those two things can be factual at the same exact time here.
Well, Siwoo Kim is making cuts more than Justin Rose is in majors. You know, how do you win a matchup? You play the weekend and your buddy isn't. You can play as badly as Siwoo Kim. And you know what? I wouldn't be shocked if Siwoo Kim goes and plays the weekend and then just backpedals, because he's also one of these mental midgets when it comes to majors. He can't putt, but the ball striking, maybe this week is also one of the best weeks for Siwoo Kim. I'm an endorser of Siwoo Kim this week for you in a big way, Spencer. I don't mind that bet at all. And the thing is, this is the same golfer we're talking about that you can play in a multitude of ways.
Yeah.
You know, you can play against him or you can play with him. It just depends what market, and neither can be wrong or neither can be right. You know, like, it's whatever. So it is what it is. What it is Russell Henley in majors, people. We finally notched a top, you know, big end finish at a third place. Shout out Rosie for giving Henley that third. It would have been a fourth, but he finished third at the Masters 2 majors ago, missed the cut at the PGA Championship, which I thought was an ideal venue for him. This week, I think, is another great golf course for Russell Henley, Spencer. I grabbed a 45-1 out there when one book was disrespecting him in that department. By the way, Justin Rose, I mentioned this on the Fantasy Golf Degenerates, that you don't have to pounce on the 40. He's now 65-1 at DraftKings. So that is a much more palatable number, in my opinion, than a 40. And you can, you know, basically get 3 Justin Roses for the price of like a Matthew Fitzpatrick or a Cameron Young type situation now. But we're talking about Russell Henley. We are talking Russell Henley top 5 at plus 600. We're talking Russell Henley top 10 at plus 300. I believe we are betting to win. I don't remember what I bet those at, but we are betting to at least win a unit in each one of those areas, along with the outright of 45-1. Russell Henley, you're getting a 45-1 number on someone that, since the 2024 US Open, has finished 7th, 7th, 10th, 10th, 3rd in the last 8 majors. So more than half of his last majors in the last 8 majors have been top 10s. 5 of them have been top 10s. 3 of them have been miscuts. What are we doing at this price? What are we doing at these odds? Spencer Aguiar, Russell Henley.
This is the one. I mean, I will be happy for you if he ends up getting across the finish line. This is the one that's going to hurt me the most. I feel like I have been on the Russell Henley bandwagon for years now, before the market kind of started agreeing that Russell Henley is a legitimate top 10, 12 type of player in the world. And we've reached a consensus on that now, and maybe not necessarily at this 45-1 price where it boosted up a little bit too far, but I agree with you. Look, I ended up having a little bit more exposure on my outright card than I normally would get. Yeah, I mean, I don't understand some of it, but I bet Scotty Scheffler, and I had very little room outside of that, and I really had no room, and I decided to bet Siwoo Kim. We will see if that upside does not come to fruition, as you said, and you are correct. He may end up backpedaling as the weekend goes on. Like, I've seen it a lot from him. I ended up doing it over Henley, and I sat there and I soul searched it before I actually punched the ticket, and I said, how upset am I going to be? And I was like, I'm going to be very upset. And I was like, well, how upset am I going to be the other way? And I was like, oh, I'm going to be upset too. And I decided to just leave Henley on the sidelines. He is primed, potentially ready to win a major, a U.S. Open in this sort of a setup. I know I'm singing his praises with no ticket on him, and it's going to hurt, but this is probably my favorite ticket that you have. This is a very nice spot.
It's disrespectful, in my opinion.
I agree.
The hellish conditions is what he does his best in. In majors, he's been incredible on approach, probably because he's hitting from the middle of the fairway all the time. This is one venue that's not going to hurt him with the lack of distance off the tee. It's potentially going to help him because he's super accurate, hitting his driver to where everyone's clubbing down 3 woods. I'm thinking Russell Henley is going to do wonderful things this week. The majors, he's actually been better in the last 10 majors than he has the last 6, which is hilarious to even think about, but there are a couple miscuts in the mix there too. So, 3 of them have been miscuts. So it's interesting. He doesn't nearly give you the safety that you're looking for, but Jesus, dude, these are a lot of high-end finishes from a guy that's very affordable in any capacity that you're looking to get exposure to this week.
Yeah, too cheap on DFS. I think this is one of those things where there is a correlation on a lot of his numbers, and they just all were too highly priced.
Tyrrell Hatton, Spencer, is number 12 in my model for the majors. What is he in my weekly model for Tyrrell? He's 14th in that department. So again, if we're taking a look at what Tyrrell's been up to in the last couple majors, missed the cut at the PGA Championship. It is what it is. Another really wedge-intensive venue. He's not necessarily the greatest with the wedges. I do think Tyrrell Hatton, though, we saw him at Torrey Pines number 2. Here, he was, I think, in the mix. He also finished 4th at Oakmont, like a very, very difficult golf course. He's very comfortable in those conditions. 14th at the Masters and then a 3rd at the Masters. Remember, this is Tyrrell Hatton that was cussing out the Masters back in 2023. Has now rattled off a 9th, a 14th, and a 3rd at that venue. He's starting to find his major feet, Spence. If you take a look at Tyrrell's major data here, you can see how he's improving in majors quite a lot over the last 6, 10, and 14, 18 of them, So thoughts on Tyrrell Hatton this week. I've also got a top 20 at it at plus 160 for Tyrrell Hatton at the US Open.
I think my favorite quote that I've seen somebody make so far this week is from Hatton when he talked about every single week he loses his mind. And this week at a US Open, everybody has to live in his world of kind of having those same.
Was that Oakmont?
Yeah. And Hatton is, I think, so I have him 13th in my model. I have him 10th for upside. I know I gave this answer about Russell Henley. That one's going to hurt me more, but I also considered the Hatton route on this. Like, if I did not start a card with Scotty Scheffler and I was trying to build this differently, my card probably would have consisted of some combination of Henley, Hatton, probably Reed. I mean, that's 3 of the names that you have talked about.
Yeah.
Might fit in like a Xander somewhere in there and call it a day. Like that might have been what it ended up being. Maybe a little bit deeper on a couple of those names that I like too. But I like the Hatton take. I agree with you. And I even said it at the beginning, like talking about major championships. This is much more of a link style US Open, and one of the best link style players in the world is Hatton with everything that he's able to do. Very nice course fit for him. I think that this is kind of the exact setup where he can get one.
Yeah, he's been trending, 2 top 5s in his last 4 majors. It's what you need at this venue. Russell Henley is due already. And he won a Colonial, like he's got that win super recently. Did it come from out of nowhere? Yes. But did he nut up in the playoff? Yes, as well. So I wouldn't be shocked for him to win to win a major soon. He's starting to find his feet in the majors. So we'll see what happens there. Ian said he's got a final question for us. Give me a player under 31 odds board who's absolutely not winning. Spencer, who is that for you?
I mean, I know the market has shifted quite substantially on some of these where I'm trying to give somebody that's...
The options you have available are Ludwig, per DraftKings. Okay. Ludwig, use code FGD when signing up as a first-time depositor, by the way. Thank you, Ian. Ludwig, 26-1. Tommy Fleetwood, 22.5-1. Matt Fitzpatrick, 22-1. Cam Young, 19. Xander, 18. John Rahm, 12. Rory, 9. And Scotty, 4.5.
It's a tough range that moved a lot of those guys that I would have liked to have said, like a Bryson out of it. Or,
that was going to be my like low-hanging fruit statfish of the week this week, who was not winning. I'm going to cheat and say that Wyndham Clark being 44-1 is not happening this week. And it's a bad way to answer this question because he absolutely can win, but he's also, who's got the chance in this range of absolutely flaming out the hardest? It's Wyndham Clark. And this is more of a DFS take than anything else because I think he could come in quite owned this week at his price. So I think Xander could be the answer that's not going to win this week. Is he going to top 20? Yes, absolutely. Geez, I hope he does. I'll be a lot richer at the end of the Open Championship if he does that as well. But I think he needs to get into the mix. It's been a long time since Xander's done his thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough question. I don't know if there's anybody of those names that you listed that like I have no faith in actually winning this thing. It is. I mean, if you say Wyndham, I kind of would like to just say Brooks Koepka at 36-1.
Well, yeah, that's these two are obvious. You know, that's the thing.
That's the thing is, I mean, this is the very easy answer to like avoid. According to my model, the worst one would be, I mean, it would be Tommy Fleetwood. I also think this is a great setup for Tommy Fleetwood. I mean, he does not win golf tournaments, and some of the win equity marks kind of show that in my build. I do think, though, like, I don't give that answer of Fleetwood. Not saying he's going to, I think he's going to be a top 20 golfer that comes in 7th place and doesn't win this thing.
Well, yeah, that is the epitome of, that is what's going to be on Tommy Fleetwood's tombstone is my body died first, but my soul died second.
I had Fleetwood here in 2018. I also had Koepka. That was one of the most like sweat-free finishes that I've had in a really long time. I usually don't have it as cleanly as that.
Dude, that's a great vibe. That's a great vibe to have. Granted, I went into the Canadian Open hitting. This is just the thing. I had Cristobal Del Solar 350-1 last year at the Canadian Open, saved my season. Didn't hit a single bet last week. So, same tournament, completely whiff. Save the season, nuke the season. It is what it is. So, we'll see what happens. JJ Spahn comes in here trying to win just like Brooks did. His second US Open in a row as well. By the way, people, Spencer's website, link is in the description below. Free articles, premium models, everything worth every single penny. Trust me, this is why he's on the show. I am a big believer in what you produce, Spencer, but big believer in the work you put out there. Tell everyone else what else is cooking in your life. I know you had a million podcasts, so I appreciate you wedging out a couple minutes for me this fine US Open week.
Anytime you ask, Byron, I'll always be here. I appreciate the endorsement. And I've said this a million times. Byron is a mad scientist when it comes to building his model. I try to be the same exact way with that. And just because you are subscribing to myself or you are subscribing to Byron does not mean you cannot subscribe to the other. You will get similar viewpoints and as opposite as you can get on the reverse end of it. And it's one of my favorite things about doing a show with Byron is, we started this years ago, my dude. And I feel like, there will be at some point, I can promise people that I am pushing hard behind the scenes, trying to figure out how we can get a show back up and running again. It's the number one thing on my bucket list of how do we get this back into motion. So don't know when that's going to be, hopefully sooner than later. But if you're not doing so already, you can find me on X at TOffSports. As Byron said, you can find my website, toffsports.club. Write a ton of articles every single week. I write more articles than I can even say on this show. Like I think some of these weeks we hit about 15 articles that end up getting posted, and there are free ones in there. And anybody who just wants to check out the website, you can do so through the Players Club. It's a free sign up. It gets you access to the free version of the Discord. A lot of like-minded individuals that are talking golf. I tease bets in there. It's not just about a premium subscription. I want people to be in a spot of everybody being a community, having camaraderie, us being able to talk golf on this. And if you want, you can tune in. So I'm going to be doing the Roto Grinders show with Farnsworth in about 30 minutes now. And then my show, King of the Draft, which congratulations, Byron, you have advanced to the final 16 on that. The best people in the space are competing there, and it's no different tonight. We have Tambo, we have Sia Najad, we have Joe Idoni, we have Chris Ebom. 2 spots will be up for grab. That's 6 o'clock over on my YouTube channel, Toff Sports. And I'll actually break the announcement here. We don't have it officially signed and done yet, but I did tell Byron about this, so we'll leak it on your show. There is going to be a grand prize, $1,000 to the winner, championship belt that's going to come into play. Who that is, we will announce when this becomes more into motion and we get things. But I'm hoping to turn this into something that we can turn into a yearly contest. It's kind of my baby at this point. I do it with Joel Schreck. So congratulations, first of all, Byron. And tune in if you haven't before.
I'm not even for the money and the prestige. I just thoroughly enjoy going on the show and drafting the team with you as the host of the show with Joel. It's one of my favorite. I do so much hosting, Spence.
Yeah.
I love being a guest on a show. It's so much less stressful. I can let the guy just let it go off the rails. It's not my problem. Like I can be the reason it goes off the rails. It's all good. So it's really fun being on your show with you. And it's going to be fun putting a show together weekly going forward. Once we figure that out, it's going to happen. We're going to speak it into existence, just like we are all of our bets, all of our DFS plays, and use code BETS26 to get 50% off annual and monthly subs at the Model Maniac Patreon. The annual includes the Dog Dominator. So if you do best ball, that is included. You get half off the annual, which is the free Dog Dominator as well. So to me, it's a no-brainer in that department. I would go check out the annual, link in the description below, along with Spencer's website and all the other good stuff for DraftKings below there. Use code FGD. As we get the hell out of here, many of you still hanging out in the chat. I appreciate you big time, boys. Neil, thank you. We'll have Neil on the show. John Deere Classic hasn't approved that yet. I just invited him on the show earlier. It's going to be a great week, Spence, at the US Open. Go Scotty Scheffler. Go everybody else. Either way, looking forward to a fantastic week of watching. Final thoughts.
It's going to be chaos, I think. I saw the over-under was 2.5 players under par. I don't know exactly where we're going to land. Those are always tough markets. I mean, I guess the USGA can kind of control this depending on where they put the pin locations and really depending on how bad this wind gets on Thursday, where there could be a wave advantage that ends up forming. That's something to keep an eye on for DraftKings contests. And DraftKings is the sponsor, correct?
Absolutely. And again, as a guest of the show, you can say whatever you want, you're not being sponsored. I'm not going to get in trouble for you saying anything, but at a book that isn't DraftKings, I did find a Cam Smith, 90-1 first round leader, which I think is a solid option. He goes off early. I'm going to now dive into the first round stuff because Tee Times came out a little bit ago. So we are now looking there.
I mean, counterintuitive thing for me is I'm trying to get sponsors for my show. I should probably be trying to not tout every single book. Maybe that's actually the way to go about it, though, to get somebody to actually do it. But shop around for the best price. That's the name of the game in betting. A lot of great books out there. DraftKings is a great book. I've done some stuff with them in the past through podcasts that I have done. Love everything that they do, but if you're trying to make a living, you got to shop around.
Business is business, people. You've got to go shopping. Odd shopping is more important than your wife shopping. We save money shopping, wives spend the money shopping. That's just how it goes. So it's a balance of the world that's essential. Do it. But you know, in order to shop, you need to have a DraftKings account and use code FGD.
Has to be one of them.
Exactly. So we'll catch you guys next Tuesday. Really appreciate you all tuning in. Till then, we'll see you. Bye-bye.